Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Well, the saga about Cardinal Fernandez gets stranger and stranger. Bishop Vigano has called for Fernandez and Pope Francis to be arrested by the Swiss Guard. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think anybody thinks that's going to happen. But why did he say that? Well, let's actually look at his tweet here. Just take a quick look. He says the blasphemous sewer regurgitations of Tucci's repulsive pamphlet show such a level of perversion and alienation of the faith as to demand the expulsion manu militari of the Argentinian and his accomplices. They're both Argentinian, by the way, both these men. The Swiss guards have sworn to defend the See of Peter, not the one who is systematically demolishing it. Let them therefore be faithful to their oath and arrest these heretical perverts. Very strong language. Now, I don't think there's any precedent for this. I don't see this happening, that there's going to be any arrest of Pope Francis or Cardinal Fernandez. But it does raise an interesting conundrum here. I mean, what do you do when the man in charge of the church is employing people in the highest levels of doctrine that are essentially, well, they're just agents of complete perversion? I talked about this at length in another video, if you want to check that out, about the dark side is worse than you think when you actually analyze what's in the text, what that has to do with occult significance. But we're in a position now where, you look at these old mechanisms, the Swiss Guard, you look at how sort of coups of various states and things like that have taken place in the past. I don't know how you get out of a position like this without something drastic. I'm not advocating for any of that. But I mean, it's just at this point, it's beyond absurd. I mean, we're in the realm of complete absurdity. We're in the realm of complete, absolute absurdity. I saw Cardinal Fernandez put out some sort of, not retraction, but explanation. He said, well, I wouldn't write that book now. I did it at the time for married couples, blah, 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 blah. But I worry now that it could be misinterpreted. These people are just laughing at us. I mean, there's no way to stop what's happening in Rome. I mean, it really is unbelievable. Pope Francis might be the worst pope in the history of the Catholic Church. I mean, it's a fact. And I don't think what Bishop Vigano said is going to happen. I can't see that happening at all. But the sentiment, that he has is basically there's been some sort of coup of the church. I really don't know what else one can do. I mean, the See of Peter is held by a man who promotes the most vile of perverts who publicly are perverts. I don't know if we've ever, maybe we have, but I don't know if we've ever seen something like this in the history of the church. I don't know. I don't think we've ever seen something, maybe we have. You can look into the age of the pornocracy with the Medici influence and things like that. But I don't know. I don't know if we've ever seen something like this. I might be wrong about the Medici timeline, by the way, so don't get at me in the comments if I made the wrong comment there. I'm spitting off the top of my head. I don't know if we've ever seen something like this. And if you look back at those times when there was this level of complete ritual debauchery that made its way into the highest offices of the Vatican, it always was followed by some sort of violence. I mean, it was. You remember a few years ago, there was the arrests of that sort of cocaine-fueled orgy in the Vatican. I mean, what happens when the Pope is essentially employing men who give inspiration to that type of behavior? As I said in my last video about this, again, this is like when serial killers, they want to get caught. It's like, obviously, they're guilty. This is kind of like what it is with Bishop Fernandez, Cardinal Fernandez. I'm not saying he's a serial killer. I'm just saying what he's done, what he's published. He's obsessed with sexuality. And actually, Taylor Marshall had a good tweet on this. I'm just going to bring that up here if I can find it real quick. Here it is. And he wrote, this is Signs of Diabolical Spirit. It's from Father Almond's Spiritual Theology, 14th chapter, a good traditional resource. It says, one of the signs of diabolical spirit, uncontrolled passions and strong inclination to sensuality, usually under the guise of mystical union. So I talked about this in my last episode, where basically, these perverts are always using this as a cover for their actions. In any case, do I think that the Swiss Guard's going to come through and sort it out? No, I don't think that at all. In fact, I know a priest who was spending some time with the Swiss Guards last summer, and he said they're very amazing, very disciplined, very good, very conservative young men. But it's a combination of that hyper-papal obedience / military. So like they don't even want to hear anything negative about Pope Francis. Like it's kind of like we don't even say that. We can't even bring that up. You know, it's like they have an aversion to it, which I get. I mean, military, I understand. But no, the Swiss Guard is not going to be arresting Pope Francis or getting rid of Tucho Fernandez. But I don't foresee any resolution to this without some sort of massive chaos. I mean, let's actually just pontificate for just a second here. Like, what do you think could actually happen? I mean, you know, I was talking to a priest about, you know, what could be the path forward for the church. I mean, how can you actually get out of the crisis? I mean, at this point, you have a man who's made a number of cardinals, Pope Francis. The vast majority of the cardinals, we would say, would be kind of on the liberal side. The wild card being the ones from the third world, and another wild card being cardinals are very political and they see the church getting out of hand and they kind of want to maintain balance. Okay, fine. But nonetheless, I mean, by any natural perspective, the next pope, I mean, he might be conservative-ish. I can see that happening because they want to kind of balance out the PR of everything. But I mean, do we really think it's going to be a Pius the 13th kind of, you know? I don't think so. It could happen. I hope it happens. But the point is, I mean, when will this crisis end? Well, how do you fix this? I mean, the disorder and the rot in this generation of prelates is so deep. Cardinal Fernandez is just the tip of the iceberg. Now, I did speak to this one priest, and he was saying he thinks it's going to be about 50, 60 years from a natural perspective, because he said, you know, when he has correspondence with young men entering the seminary, more and more and more, even in the Novus Ordo, these young men entering the seminary, they're doing so because they're on fire for very traditional reasons, and they just don't even really care about Vatican II, is what he said, which is kind of the consensus. I think that's true. I've been talking to a lot of young priests and stuff. I think that's true. Even the ones that go to the Novus Ordo seminaries, they're trying to learn the Latin Mass, all this kind of stuff. Vatican II kind of is boring to them. They've heard enough of it. Doesn't really do it for them. I do think, but it's going to take generations of people to die. I mean, these Cardinal Fernandez types, yeah, they're boomers and they're kind of on the older side, but they've still got 20 or 30 years left. You know, while that generation is going to be around. Pope Francis is definitely older, but a lot of his ilk, they're still in their 60s and 70s. They've got 20 or 30 years left with how long these men seem to live. I think it's going to be a while. So if you're either going to wait for 50 or 60 years for things to turn around, where you have this generation of heretical boomer generation and so forth kind of dying off, Vatican II generation, and then you have these younger men who eventually will be at that age. That's going to take 50 or 60 years if you think about it. Or there's going to be some sort of massive, insane event, whether a spiritual or some sort of upheaval that's going to make this happen. So while I don't think that it's going to happen, that they're going to have the Swiss Guard kind of sorting things out, at the same time, I understand where Bishop Vigano is coming from, where he's saying, what else are you supposed to do? There's really nothing else. So anyway, as always, let me know what you think in the comments. This has been the Kennedy Report. Until next time, God bless.